Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Carolyn Waters, the Director and Head Librarian here at the New York Society Library, and we are so happy to have you here for this wonderful event with Elizabeth Birkelund and Lorenzo Carcaterra. As we begin, we acknowledge that the library stands on traditional lands of the Lenape people and other indigenous peoples to whom we pay respect. And if you're new to the library, we just want to let you know we are celebrating our 270th anniversary this year. Yes, that's right. We were founded in 1754, and our new exhibition celebrates the early years of the library, the books that we purchased when we opened up in 1754, which were soon lost during the Revolution and bought again after the Revolution, the struggling library that is now this vibrant place today. I want to say that we have many events like this. This is one of the last of our season, but we hope that you will join our mailing list and learn about all the things that are coming up in the fall. And if you choose to join us, we would love that too. We're open to all who want to join us, and we'd be happy to have you. I also want to be clear tonight that we are recording and live streaming tonight's event and taking photographs. So if I could ask you to silence anything that might make a noise, that would be most appreciated. Thank you. As I said, we're delighted to have Lorenzo Carcaterra and Elizabeth Birkelund here tonight to discuss their new books, Nonna Maria and the Case of the Lost Treasure, and A Northern Light in Provence. In addition to A Northern Light in Provence, Elizabeth Birkelund is the author of two previous novels, The Runaway Wife and The Dressmaker. She started her career in the editorial department of European Travel and Life magazine, then turned to freelance writing as a monthly personal finance columnist for Cosmopolitan. She has written for numerous national publications, including Glamour, Self, Working Woman, and Victoria. Publishers Weekly says about A Northern Light in Provence, Birkelund constructs a rich world replete with real emotional stakes and lovely insights on how translation relates to life. This sumptuous tale deserves a wide audience. Lorenzo Carcaterra has been called one of my favorite writers in the world by bestselling author Lisa Scuddeline and one of the all-time greats by #1 international bestseller Jeffrey Deaver. As well as the Nonna Maria series, Lorenzo Carcaterra is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of A Safe Place, Sleepers, Apaches, Gangster, Street Boys, Paradise City, Chasers, Midnight Angels, The Wolf, Tin Badges, Payback, and Three Dreamers. He is the former writer and producer, yes, that's a lot, for Law & Order and has written for National Geographic Traveler, the New York Times Magazine, Details, and Maxim. We do have copies of books for sale by our friends from the corner bookstore. Sasha's there in the back, and I'm sure our authors would be happy to sign them afterwards. So I'm now very pleased to turn over the microphone to Lorenzo Carcaterra and Elizabeth Birkelund.
Are we on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You can hear me? Well, you can hear me without this, right? I'm Italian, we're loud. So we're supposed to tell you about our books. All right. Nonna Maria is basically in a log line, an old Italian woman in her 70s who helps her friends and helps solve crimes on the Italian island of Ischia, where I've been very fortunate to go every year since I was a kid. And she works in conjunction with her many friends and the captain of the Carabinieri, Paolo Morino. And each book involves two cases, and again, each case is to help her friends. In this case, solve crimes, but and it's based on the real Nonna Maria, my grandmother.
And A Northern Light in Provence is about Ilse Erland, who's a translator, and she lives in Greenland in a cottage on stilts, and leaves her coastal village feeling isolated and restless, and goes to Provence to translate the last living troubadour of Provence. And there she falls in love, of course, with Provence and the poet and another and the poet's son.
So you want to go? That's it. We're done.
That's our introduction. And so now we're just going to ask each other questions.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, but I do want to say that I've come to this library since I was 10 years old, and have been so grateful for this place. And I continue to write in the stacks in this library.
Really? That's pretty cool.
So I just want to say this is like being home for me. So, all right, shall we?
Yeah.
All right.
You begin.
Okay.
Ladies first.
Okay, so a good question is from writer to writer is what drives this book? Is it your Nonna Maria series? Is it character, setting, or plot? Because you've got all three that are very strong in that book.
I think for me, there's a lot of reasons why I've been doing this, but one of the most important things was, she was very instrumental. The real Nonna Maria is very instrumental in my life, and I spent 7 amazing summers with her from the age of 14 to 21. So she kind of nurtured me along the way and put me on the right path. So it's a way of, even though she's a fictional character, all the things she does, other than solving homicides, is what the real Nonna did do. And it was a way for me to keep her alive. And not that she isn't. I think about her all the time. But, to be, as you know, we're sitting alone in a room, and it kind of was, it's a weird feeling because you feel like she's around you all the time when you're writing about her, as opposed to just thinking about her now and then as you're driving or whatever, walking your dog. So that was, to me, one of the most important reasons to do the series, was to not only keep her alive, but keep that island, which means so much to me, and its people alive. So that was one of the driving forces. Okay. And the other was that they asked me to do it, so.
Well, nobody asked me to write this book, I tell you. But I guess I would say for me it would be character, because my character is a translator, and the concept of translation has always intrigued me, and I wanted to explore through my character what translation was. So she drove the plot as a translator, and then I decided I knew she'd be going to France because I'm a Francophile, but I wanted her to translate place as well as language, and I thought a big contrast would be Greenland, because it's Greenland. It's cool.
Did the character lead you to the plot, or was it separate?
The character led me to the plot because I knew she was a translator, and so she had to. Actually, she had never been to France, and she had been translating French into Danish and English. So she led me to Provence. She led me to the plot. The plot
Right.
became more intricate thanks to her. Yeah.
So you knew from the get-go that you were, through the character, you're going to end up in Provence.
I knew she would end up in. I don't know where she ends up because I'm not giving it away, but she definitely had to go. She definitely had to go to Provence.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. And I know setting for both of us, but especially Ischia and a small village in Ischia. This book was amazing because you really get all the details of the Ischia life. I know that must have started.
That was the hard part was, when they initially asked that Nonna Maria be this, she died, the real Nonna died in 1975. So to make her a contemporary character today helping solve crimes. So I said, yeah, let me think about it for a day or two. It sounds like a great idea. I hung up. The big problem, and for the plot, is there is no crime on the island of Ischia, 0. And so I called some cousins and relatives there, and I said, listen, I'm going to do this thing, and I have to kill somebody. And everybody said, in Ischia? I said, yeah. I said, well, the Carabinieri go to Ischia to vacation. There's nothing to do. I said, well, I need a murder, dude. I can't bring in the Carabinieri on a purse snatching. And so that was the hard part for me, to come up with the plots. And so the only feedback I got from the crew back there was, did it have to be murder? So, but I think this third one, it's been a while since I read the third one. It's been a year and a half, I think. But I think there is, consciously, I wanted to do a treasure hunt. That's why I did the treasure thing. So I'm obsessed with treasure hunts. So.
May I ask you something?
Sure.
I guess, yeah.
I'm
I'm sorry I haven't read the books,
Yeah.
So how do you, and it's a question for you too, when you're writing about a foreign country or takes place in a foreign country, how do you handle the language? I mean, obviously you're not writing the Italian characters speaking Italian and the other people speaking their own, but so much of what's interesting about a foreign country is the language and the way they use language. So how do you approach that?
Yeah, well, that's what my book is about, actually, right there. It's about how do you translate language, and then in terms of writing about it, I didn't notice you had so many Italian phrases, but my book is about translating the French phrases and having this character struggle with how to translate the words, not only the words, but the culture, because translation is not mathematics, it's culture to culture, and really a deeper understanding of the language. But in the actual book, in terms of writing it, I think for my book I needed to have some French in the book to give that kind of feeling of it being in place, and I needed some characters to say monsieur, bonjour, and definitely I brought in the French. So I sprinkled the French throughout.
Yeah, for me with Ischia, my mother never, she lived here, she never learned English. So the first language, I didn't speak English till I was 6 here. And thanks to 2 nuns, I kind of learned English. But so the Ischia dialect is very different. For example, if I speak the Ischia dialect, my cousin in Milan won't understand me. My cousin in Florence won't understand. So Nonna, for example, there are certain Italian words. Pomeriggio, as an example, means in the afternoon. Well, she wouldn't know what that word meant. She would know the dialect, which is Ujordan. So I just stayed away from that. I kind of had her speak in a way that, I didn't want to bachagalup it. So, I just had her speak as normal as she would, but without the Italian phrase. Because I couldn't, if I put in Italian phrases, Italians wouldn't understand unless you're from Ischia. Even people in Naples don't understand Ischitano. So it's a whole different language. So that was a hurdle I didn't want to have to jump, and I didn't think I needed to. And now it's interesting, the Italian translation, she's having a difficult time because she doesn't know the dialect. And to see it written is very different than hearing it. So I kind of ducked it, I guess.
I wanted to talk about one big theme in your book is friendship and loyalty.
Yeah.
And in mine, it's more like love in various ways. But I thought we could talk about that.
Yeah, I guess, with all my books, the one factor not missing from the Nonna is revenge. All my other books, my publisher tells me this, it's friendship, loyalty, and revenge. Here, Nonna doesn't need revenge. She just gets justice for her friends. But as far as Nonna is concerned, she was very loyal to, the real Nonna and the fictional, is very loyal to her friends. So that was a big part of it. And she was very trusted on the island, and because she could keep a secret. She would never, for example, if she were with you, she would never, ever ask you a personal question, no matter how innocent, like, are you drinking water? She would never ask. But by the same token, she wouldn't want to be asked a personal question. And I'll give you a quick example of that. We used to have dinner together, my Nonna and I, and then at night we walk up to this, in front of St. Peter's Church, there's a stone seat where we would sit together. And it's on Corso Vittorio Colonna, where she claimed all the rich people would go for the walk at night, but they were just tourists getting dressed up. And anyways, this guy came over one night and said, Buonasera Maria, and already she was pissed that the guy came over. And she said, yes, Buonasera. And she said, is this your grandson? She goes, yes, from America. He goes, so he wanted to know what because everyone knew what a great cook she was, and asked, what fine meal did you make tonight? And she, without hesitating, said, we had steak with a little olive oil and lemon. We had roasted peppers. We had a fresh tomato salad with red onions. Guy goes, bravo, your grandson's never going to leave Ischia. And he walks away. So when he was out of earshot, I said, no, we had pasta with clam sauce. And she said, why is it important to him to know what we ate? Why? Yeah. So let him think we had steak. So that was no. But that's, I think, an aftermath of having lived through the war, having lost a son, a grandson, a son-in-law, and all of that, and getting bombed. The island got bombed. It was occupied by the Nazis. So all of that kind of fed into the not secrecy, but her hesitation to, quote, share.
Yeah. Well, I guess in my case, the love part was, I guess the original title was Translating Love. So that was a pretty big theme, that she comes from Greenland and has one relationship with her father and her brother, and then she just gradually keeps translating different versions of relationships, and through the elderly poet, she has a love of language, and through the French women in her life, she has an appreciation for their lifestyle. And so, anyway, the love thing was eventually she kind of realizes that she has to find herself in order to make the right choices. So.
Now, do you outline? Do you outline extensively? Do you outline just a little bit? I mean, do you know how it's going to end? Do you know where you're going through the whole bit?
Yes. Well, I do start with an outline, right. But I don't have an ending yet. I don't outline the ending. I do start with the outline. I start with the idea, the outline, the middle. I get to the middle, usually the conflict, and back to history. My history teacher's here. Anyway,
so
I do that.
You include that in as you're researching.
And then I'm right. So I do the outline, and then I usually do and the first step is the note taking for the subject matter. For my case, translation, Provence, Greenland was a lot of research, and talking to a lot of explorers, and then troubadours was another big pile of books, and then I take the notes, then I do the outline, and then I figure out, and then the book kind of leads me in the direction of the
so
plot,
how much,
the end.
how different from the original outline is the book? I mean, how much do you change as you work?
Usually I stick pretty close to the book ends up pretty close to the first half of the outline, but the second half, I don't make the second half of the outline.
Right.
And how about you?
My outlines suck. So basically, I'd like to tell you the story because I don't know where I'm going until I'm writing, and so I kind of have a general idea of what it is. And I've been fortunate from book one. I haven't had only 3 dreamers. I had to outline it because for some reason my agent said, just try an outline. How bad can it be? And then I send it in. She goes, holy shit, this is horrible. So she'll come in and talk. I mean, I can talk it. I can tell you where we're going, what we're going to do, but I have no idea how it's going to end and all of that, and what characters might pop up. And so I do have to outline on scripts, and on Law and Order, those are really, they do in TV they do what they call beat sheets, which is basically a step-by-step breakdown of every scene in the book in the show, which takes me forever. I can write a Law and Order in one night. It takes me 3 weeks to do a beat sheet. So no, I'm very envious of writers who can outline, except for James Ellroy. Do you know James Ellroy writes 300-page outlines and 500-page books? It's like, why do the outline? Just write the book. But so you do veer away from the outline.
Well, and I don't write the second part of the outline, so I'm free.
You do that on purpose?
Yeah. So then I'm free to go in which direction the character takes me, usually. And because the note-taking is the part where you get to know what the character would do realistically.
Do you find at some point, because I've asked a lot of writers this, do you find at some point it's an eerie feeling that the book kind of takes over, and it's not, you're just kind of, I know this sounds weird, but we work alone, and so it's at some point it feels like you'll go upstairs to write and you end up writing something that you had no intention of writing, and you look up and it's 6 pages of something, that you think is great, but what are you going to do? Just go, hey, way to go, Lorenzo. There's no one around, and my dog doesn't care. And so, but I do like that kind of magical feeling. Sometimes it happens in page, if you're lucky, it happens early in the book.
Right.
Like page 50, page 60. If you're not lucky, it's page 210, and you're like, oh my God. But, some days it's like pulling teeth, and some days it just, the best part is when it's kind of taken off. Do you find that it just kind of,
Yeah, you get
it's
in
no
the
longer
zone.
yours? Yeah,
You get in the
kinda,
zone. But I do find that it is a result of it isn't just like the muse, even though that would be nice to have just the muse
yeah.
speaking to you through. But I do find that it is more right. I'm sort of exploring without realizing it, and so what's coming is all the experience, all the people, all the everything. So it's like the everything, the kaleidoscope of your life is sort of is coming into your writing. So I think it's not. I wish it were just as easy as the muse, but it's definitely part of everything. Part of everything you are.
It's a great.
Really.
I mean, the fear is that like Richard Price has this great quote where he said, "Whenever a writer starts a new book, we're afraid we're going to be exposed as the frauds we really are." And that first page is really, daunting. And I came from newspapers and magazines, and I remember on my first book, I still do this to this day. Whatever I write in a given week, and I've had editors who've been very patient with that. Whatever I write in a given week, I mail to my editor, or now you just hit a button, but in the old days you mail it. And I remember on my first book, I wrote 4 pages, and I mailed it to Peter Gethers, was my editor then, and I said, "So what'd you think?" He goes, "Oh, you wanted me to read the 4 pages?" I said, "Well, yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, pretty good. You just got about 400 more to go." And then it dawned on me. I said, "Oh," he said, "I'm just going to keep piling them up, and basically the agreement I have with my editors is just keep going until you hear from me. And then if I hear from them, we stop." Like with one of my books, Peter stopped me at page 200 and said, "We're off here." So we threw out 200 pages,
Wow.
which is not a good day.
No.
And but in a way, that first draft is actually 2 drafts. It's like your second draft. So, and he was right. We had to throw them out because it just wasn't clicking. But so you start again on page 1. But I do want that gratification, which I got at newspapers and magazines. And even though Pete Hamill told me many years ago, no matter how good your article in a paper is, the next day there's a dog crapping on it. So luckily that, with books, that whether they sell or not, they're on the shelf. So.
Wow. Well, my editing experience is different because I'm not. I don't. Well, I shouldn't say that about my editor because I love my editor, but I don't trust myself to. If I were to give the editor the first 100 pages, I would be worried that she would turn me in a different direction from the direction that I should be going in. And I think that, so I wait. I write the
You
whole
wait
thing.
until you're done. Yeah.
And I have done that before, where I have been 50 pages in, met with my agent and my writer and the 3 of us, and it was like it was like writing a TV script, because, and then I thought, no, that's wrong. So I had to go back and rewrite it and just create it.
So
for
do you get
myself.
notes? See, I don't get notes from, what I work out with my editors is, if my agent has notes, they go to my editor. I just want one set of notes coming to me.
Right.
I can't have, like, my agent sending me notes, my manager sending me notes, my lawyer sending me notes, suddenly, because you don't know who to answer. So any note I get, I have no idea who sent that note. And also, as you know, we don't have to answer all the notes. You can
Right.
you can fight for your scenes in books. I mean, if you believe it. I mean, one of my Mark Tavani, who's now an agent, was one of my editors, and he called me on one book, and he said, "I don't think we need chapter 6." And I said, "I think we do need chapter 6." And he said, "Prove your case, Perry Mason." I said, "Oh, okay." So I gave him my 10-minute spiel, and he said, "All right, trim it by a page and a half. You're right." I said, "That was easy." And but so, and you need my editors. I've been lucky that I've only had 3 for all the books I've done for all the books. 15, I think. They're terrific line editors. I do take their line edits. Having Tavani as my editor, he's Italian and speaks fluent Italian. I spelled a few words in Italian incorrectly. And he's Northern Italian, I'm Southern Italian, so we really, it's like the Hatfields and the McCoys, and he would circle as Italian my ass. And I said, come on, dude, it's one N extra. And I blame the computer. It's like, it wasn't me, it was like, auto, whatever. So I do see it as a teamwork thing if you're lucky enough to have good editors. And Peter was great, and Anne has been terrific, and so I've been very lucky with that because I hear horror stories. I'm sure you've heard them, where the editors chopped them up. And I did have a 4th editor, but they blamed me. He was only my editor for 2 weeks. He's a great guy, Southern gentleman, and apparently if you're at Random House X number of years, you get like a 6-month sabbatical. So he'd been my editor for 2 weeks, and he said, keep writing. I'm going on this sabbatical. I'll be back in 6 months, and you'll be finished. Well, he never came back. He quit because he loved being in South Carolina, where he was from. And my publisher called me. He goes, what did you say to him? I said, I have a nice trip. I mean, Anyway, so I don't count him as my editor. We had lunch once, and that was it.
Well, my editor did something unbelievable. She actually came to Greenland with me.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and because I had written the first draft without going to Greenland. And so then she said, well, first she didn't know I hadn't been to Greenland, and she said,
Right.
So how was that trip to Greenland? And I said, well, I haven't been yet. And then she said, you're going to Greenland. And I said, yes, and then I said, do you want to come? And she said, okay. So
what was that like? Was that intimidating for you, or was it?
It was tricky because, and she's my first editor on this book,
Right.
and she's unbelievable. 40 years of executive editing. I mean,
So you asked her to join you?
I did.
Okay.
But actually, it was a little stressful because I had already written a lot of the novel, and she was there fact checking, and seeing what I got wrong, and I didn't know what I had gotten wrong yet. So it was tricky, but it was great to have her along because she pointed out things, and the two of us kind of took some notes together.
So you were editing while she was out, while you were together in Greenland?
We weren't editing, we were just
talking.
feeling Greenland, experiencing Greenland, and there was one day when we actually went to the place where my character's from, this little peninsula, 30 people settlement, and she knew the book so well, and she said, "Do you notice something about this place that is not correct in your book?" And I said, "No roads." No cars, no trucks, and I had, of course, emergency vehicles and all kinds of vehicles in that part of the book, and so that was a big change because everything was people moved by boat, dog sledding, or walking, and or ATVs. So I changed a lot of that. But
Is that something you would do again, like travel with your editor? I never even thought of doing that.
She was reading a lot of the time, not my work, but
other books. Right.
she was, and then, she was fantastic. I mean, she was absolutely great, and we could talk about the book. I didn't want to make it too much work for her, so we kept it vacation-ish, and she was a great partner to have, and she helped because she was there. Editing the rest of the book was really a pleasure. We worked really well together. So.
Yeah. No, that's key. I really do think that helps a book a lot. I think an editor can improve it by, as much as 30, 40%. And each editor, I mean, Peter was, if I was stuck on something, I would write Peter Gathers, who's an author himself, and created 4 television shows. So he's sort of like a Renaissance dude. And so I would write him and say, listen, I'm having a hard time with this particular section. And he would never respond. He would send me a joke. And that was his way of, like a skeleton. I'd read this email, oh, Peter responded, he's going to help me. And it's like a skeleton goes into a bar. And you go like, it's like, and he said, just relax, it'll happen. Just let it sit.
And those are the good editors that don't, that allow you to do the work. I mean, that allow it to come from you. And
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
and
it's-
each one I've had a different relationship with, which I'm,
Yeah.
your previous editors too. And with Tivani, I have Ranger season tickets, and he's from Philly. So the first game I invited him to was
Flyers.
to see the Rangers Flyers. He comes equipped head to toe, dressed as, And I had just met him. I said, listen, I can fight one, maybe two guys, but I can't take on the whole crew. He goes, I got this. I said, all right, what are you going to do? And, we're 4 rows from the ice, so, semi-civilized crowd. And he bought beers for everybody. I said, well, that'll help you if they lose. And he was cool. So the next game I brought somebody else, and the guys around me said, where's that guy with the Flyers outfit? Because I don't buy beers for 18 guys around me. So he and I would do our business in between periods at the Ranger games. Little suggestions change a book
Yeah.
dramatically. And a really good editor, like Peter, Mark, and Ann, it's not their book. So their job is to make your book better, but through your voice and through your writing abilities and your style, if you have whatever style you have. The bad editors, I think, are the ones who think they can
Rewrite
do the
your
book.
book.
Yeah, rewrite the book.
Yeah.
And luckily, knock wood, I don't have to deal with any of them at all. And especially now that I'm getting older, I probably never.
Well, I was thinking it might be nice to talk about the magic of a village for a writer.
Well, you mean like Ischia, yeah.
And I had the Provence and
Right.
the little Greenland. So, I mean, what about that for you? I mean, you were...
Well, I've been
The
lucky.
magic.
I went to Ischia when I was 14, and I've gone every year since, except for the pandemic years. It is a place, I mean, I think of it as home. I mean, I sort of have 1 foot here, 1 foot there kind of thing. And so to me, it's, sadly, as the years have gone by, there was a time when I couldn't walk from here to that door without running into a friend or a relative or an aunt, a cousin, whatever. Now, you run into memories. So that's what's changed. Everybody, people have passed on. But I still have I do think of Ischia as home. And I almost moved there when I was 18. I really had to think about it very seriously. And it was a tough call. I still don't know it now. I'm 69. I don't know if I made the right decision or not. I mean, I would have been we wouldn't be here talking. I wouldn't have been a writer, that I know. Because, I've probably been like my uncle in the tour business. And, well, he just died at 94, and he died a billionaire, so, may not have been a bad move. But there was pressure to stay, for me internally to stay. But there was also pressure here to come because my parents had a very bizarre marriage and violent marriage. And so, yeah, I don't know. But I do think of it, it's my special place. It's my go-to place. And, I mean, each year I think of going to a different place. This year I was thinking, maybe I'll go to Spain. I've never been to Spain. Or I want to go to Bordeaux country. And then I said, I'm going to Ischia. And I go to Ischia and hang out with the crew. And how about you?
Yeah, so I guess the village, these hilltop villages in Provence were where, and there's one in particular that I felt kind of a soul connection with. And I think for writing, it's so nice to have a village because you can focus on the characters in the community, and they make a difference. And even having an elderly character like Nonna, and like for me, I had the elderly poet. Their voices are heard, whereas in another place they might not be heard. And it's so much fun to, number one, to be in a village, and I mean when you can leave it as well, and when you're free to leave it. But just to have the characters, the village becomes a character. The village becomes the amalgam of all the characters together, and I think it's really fun. I mean, so many writers do this. Just have that. It's a built-in stage. It's a built-in venue and yeah, so it's just, for writers, it's perfect. So, and I fell in love with this little town in Provence, just like my character did, and so it was easy to write that.
Yeah, and also using elderly characters. I mean, in Europe, the elderly are treated with, like, for example, the carabinieri captain working with a 70-something-old woman. That normally doesn't happen. It would not happen. A police captain here, like Joe Lisi, would never call a 70 and listen to her. Instead, he does respect her. He trusts her judgment. Obviously, I didn't want her to be Dirty Harriet and go out with a magnum and blast the place. But so there is a different kind of feeling towards older people in Europe than there is here, I think. There's more respect for them, and they listen to them, because they've lived through so much, especially like Nonna lived through all the stuff, that the black market and, running bootleg wine during the war. And so I didn't think it was that big a reach. I mean, I remember having a conversation with my editor and my publisher of that. I mean, would a carabinieri captain listen to her or just, say, come on, I'm on this. It's a homicide. And I said, yeah, I think, there, yes. I can't speak for, if I was setting this book in New York, I don't know if I'd have a 70-something-old woman working with an active detective, because, here it's gunplay and there it's not, really. And it's more working it out, thinking it out, and knowing the people. And he knew that she knew the people, and he was still a stranger to them, and whereas the people trusted her, and there's an element of trust there as well.
Yeah, same thing with, in this little town, the elderly poet was very revered, and
Right.
And everybody respected him, and it was very, and that is another thing my editor said, because originally the poet was 78, and she said, it's a little old for her to be, having, being enamored of this man. And I said, it's not that old.
Yeah.
But so she said, just bring it down to 74 and we'll be okay. So they were, but over there, the age is irrelevant in a way.
Well, they're very, no matter what age they are, they're very comfortable themselves.
Right.
And it makes you comfortable going to them and talking to them. And, it's not like you have to bow down to them, but you just, you listen to what they say, because they've lived through so much of what you've lived through. I'm creeping in close to the age that Nonna Maria, was. And my kids don't listen to me that way, and but when Nonna spoke, and she didn't speak that much, but when she did, people listened, and because she had that weight of experience that the elderly have in Europe, and are given that audience to express themselves, or given the ability to express themselves, which maybe it is true here. I don't know. My experience is it isn't, but you guys may disagree. I don't know.
So in terms of challenges, what would you say challenges in terms of this book versus others?
The Nonna Maria book, I think the biggest challenge was in this one, I have her in dangerous situations, going inside the caves, and I needed to make that believable. I mean, she's got a bad hip, she's 70-something years old. Next thing I know, I got her in a pit inside a cave, and, are people going to buy that? So I had to make it as realistic as possible. And I kept a lot of Nonna can't swim, never went swimming. I mean, they had to work when they were kids, so she was one of the few people who grew up on an island who couldn't swim. So she's not afraid of the water, but, she's afraid of drowning, I guess. So the challenge was not to make it seem comical,
Right.
not to, to make whatever risk she took to make it believable. Also, in every book, she kind of strikes out at the villain in one, but, stabs him with something, or not, no gunplay, obviously. But so I needed, again, that action that she does, whether it's tripping him or hitting him with something, to be believable that someone that age could do that and would do that, and not get killed in the process. So that was a hurdle, and then incorporating all the crazy characters of that island was which ones I would use, which ones I didn't use, and what I have, because they are very they're very aware of what's written about them, and they're cool with it. But the pirate is very cool. I mean, the pirate asked me the pirate really exists. He does look like Willie Nelson. He wears a Speedo, all of it. He's 82. He asked me one thing. He said, keep my wife out of it.
Oh my goodness.
And I said, I didn't know, where's your wife? And apparently when he brings the boat up, because I would meet him, there's a boat, one of our boats takes us, tour boats, takes us to this restaurant you can only get to by water, but you can only go in a certain level. And then he has to come out with his motorboat and takes you the rest of the way. Well, I found out last summer his wife parks her boat a little to the right, making sure he doesn't hit on any women.
Oh,
And he's got the red bandana, he's got everything. So I said, are you cool with me describing you that way? And I said, yeah. He had no idea who Willie Nelson was, by the way. I said, you look just like Willie Nelson. He goes, is that good? I said, yeah, to me it's good, but, But, so I do run everything by them, and not to make them, I don't want to make fun of them, and, I've known them, a lot of them, a long time. I actually own 3 works by Pepe the Painter. My son said he's the world's worst painter. And why you have this stuff hanging in your home, I have no idea. But I kind of like them. And so that's a challenge only because I don't want to, I'm very sensitive to their feelings because I've known them all their life. And if they say, listen, I don't want to be in a book, you're not in a book. And,
yeah. Yeah.
So.
Do you write about people in the village?
Yeah. I do. I had a little hesitation of sending my book to people in the village, but because there's one person behind in the tabak who is she's a little bit of a tougher character, and she is in real life. She is a tough character. So I did, but I did of course change her name. But I did. The advantage is she doesn't speak English. But most of the people are not real. I mean, no one's real except for her, actually. I did create. She gave me her character. I mean, she didn't give it to me, but the rest are people that I created, that I made up, and that are mix of everybody, including myself. Usually, I got a little of myself in every one of those characters, but. Yeah, but the greatest challenge, that plausibility thing that you were talking about, is a challenge, because I had to do, my plausibility issue was the translator from Greenland, who, and I recently spoke to someone who's French and speaks Provençal, and she said, absolutely not. Nobody from Greenland who even speaks English is going to be able to translate Occitan, Provençal dialect. Nobody. So she was, and I said, well, this is fiction, and this could be surreal, but it is the thing about. So we did have to have my character, and this is where my editor came in, live with her French teacher. Her French teacher. So she actually, during her university years, she went down to Nuuk, which is the capital of Greenland, and that's where her French teacher was living. And so she
you
did.
made that change because of what?
I did,
Right.
because it had to be that she got the language really thoroughly in order to be able to go to Provence, be given the job. She already had this publishing job, but to be able to convince her editor that she deserved to go and could do this job, she had to have this big experience with the language. And so that definitely was a plausibility issue. And but other than that, that was probably the biggest challenge, was bringing the French culture into this translator from Greenland.
Yeah, that'd be tough. Yeah, I wouldn't know how to. Yeah.
I mean, but anyway, and also writing about Greenland without having been there. But actually, that wasn't so hard, because I think because of my father, who's got Danish heritage, and he gave me a sense of loving great big expanses. So I had a feeling for this place of ice and cold and huge, vast expanses of white. It's It's mostly ice. 80% of the island is ice. And they don't play hockey, so.
Now, I used a lot of all the locations are the vineyard. I think the first book ends in the vineyard, Sarah Dombra's vineyard. And I've been going there since I was a kid, and my family owns like a quarter of the vineyard. So I just find it the most exotic place on the island, so I thought that would be a good place to end it. But I did go to you make an effort to go to the people. So I went to, Sarah was cool. She's the daughter. She's going to inherit it. But Signor D'Ambra is a little tough. And so I went to him. I said, I want to this was at the end of the first book, I want to end my book in your vineyard. He said, you're going to kill somebody in my vineyard? I said, no, no, the bad guy will get caught in your vineyard. He goes, is he going to get killed? I said, he's getting caught. He'll be arrested. It'll be fine. I said, so you're going to have cops? I said, Jesus. I said, you know what? I won't even, it'll be grapes. He said, he's going to ruin my grapes. He said, I'm just busting your chops. You can kill 12 people. What do I care? He said, everybody buys my wine. They love my wine. So I said to Sarah, I said, your father tormented me for like an hour. But after the book came out, he sent me a case. He sends me a lot of the wine from his kit. And so, you use, it's a bloodline. I think of the books as an extension of my friends. And I made a new friend with this third book. I took the boat last summer rather, I was starting the book, and I found one of the caves, and written in paint it was called The Magician's Cave. So I went to see one of the guys, and I said, I saw this magician's cave. He said, well, you should go see the magician. I said, well, where is he? He said he lives on the island. I said, what did he do? He said, well, some people say he was a famous thief, and some people say he was a treasure hunter, so he's probably a treasure hunter who stole. And he had I went to see him. Somebody introduced me through the family, and I said, listen, I'd like to put you in a book. I'm just going to call you the magician. I'm not going to use your name. He said, well, people know I'm the magician. I said, I've been coming here since I was 14. I just found out you're the magician. And he said, all right. And then the key question is always, do I kill somebody? I said, no, man. I said, they did tell me you were a famous treasure hunter. He said, or a thief. I said, okay, so I'll do a little bit of both. Are you cool with that? He said, yeah, whatever. He said, nobody's coming. Don't tell him where my villa is. And he had this stunning home, and clearly was a thief, because he had artwork that I know was, not bought and not purchased legitimately. But so he became a really great. I had a great time with him, and so he's a new addition to the family.
Yeah. So maybe this would be a great time for questions.
Sure.
If anyone has any.
So in talking about like the towns and the people and all that, at what level do you say that it's good to add in more, more atmosphere about the town, more quirky character or something like that? Do you feel that those sorts of additions have to move the plot forward? Or do you feel comfortable just putting them in to create more atmosphere? Or is that the editor's job to tell you that you need to stop?
Well, I'll start with that. I think it's a balance. It really is. I think you start with all that you've got, and then you start to whittle away. You think of the reader and how much they can take, and how to move the plot. It has to move. The thing has to turn pages quickly, and to make it in today's, especially today, with all the distractions. So I think the key is you get as much as you can, and for me, my process is I throw it all in at once in the beginning, and then I make sure that each one contributes something to either the character or the plot or the setting, that there's a reason. There has to be a reason for every person generally in.
I think for me, I think of it as a character in the book. It's an important character. And it has such a great history. It was discovered by the Greeks and all. So I decide where like Nonna telling stories to her grandchildren, I thought would be a good place to tell the folk tale about how Ischia was discovered with a fight between Zeus and a giant. And because there are parts of Ischia named after the giant. Panza is his stomach, and the Testaccio is his head. And every 4 years, there's a little earthquake, which they attribute to the giant moving underwater. So it's a great story, though, for a grandmother to tell her small children. So I thought there's a place for that. So I pick and choose where the history, but to tell it to the characters. Like there's in the current book, there's the Cemetery of Dead Nuns, which is in the castle, which I'd been to a bunch of times. I didn't know it was a Cemetery of Dead Nuns until this past summer. And I had Nonna tell the captain about it. And because I was fascinated, there's a medieval torture chamber in the castle. Castle is a fascinating place. Has a 5-star restaurant, has a hotel, and Cemetery of Dead Nuns. And you can't beat it. And the best view of the island. So so you pick restaurants or the actual restaurants. Casa di Giuseppe, he asked me to change it to Casa di Alberto, only out of respect for his father, whose name was Alberto. So I said, okay. And so now he's actually changed the name of the restaurant to Casa di Alberto. That's great. And so you pick and choose what fits with each character. And you don't want to overwhelm them with the history, obviously. But if, I've always liked that story about Zeus and the giant, so I thought it was a good story to tell your grandchildren.
Yes, I had a question, which was that I was so surprised to hear you say that you wrote the part in Greenland without having been there. Because in fact, I'm in the middle of reading your book, nearly towards the end. And that part, you brought it alive so much. I mean, I could really see myself being there, in Greenland, and I had no desire to go to Greenland. But when I read this, I thought, oh, this is interesting. I'm not, I think I want to go and see what it looks like with all the ice and no cars and things. So to me, it was like fascinating that you were able to write about it and bring it to life the way you did. Without having been there in the first place.
But I did add a lot.
Yeah,
And
so
I added a lot of sound
oh,
after I went there.
well, it really came to life. I mean, I've been to France a lot, so I mean I know Provence, but I've never been to a place like Greenland. So it brought up a whole new world, and I just want to say to this whole audience, I'm going to read your book next. But I absolutely love your book, and I'm an avid reader. I'm a member of this library, and I'm an avid reader. And I want to say to everybody in this room, the book is just magical. And I have this tendency to skip quite a bit. I start and I skip, and I didn't skip.
Wow.
So I just want to sort of say, and also I want to say, this has been a wonderful conversation. Really enjoyed the discussion between the two of you. So thank you, Carol, for arranging it. So thank you.
Well, just a little word about Greenland. I thought Greenland was beautiful, and I would recommend going there because there will be a direct flight from JFK to Ilulissat, which is the capital of icebergs, in 2026. So now is the time to go when it was so beautiful. So, I mean, we didn't go to Iceland for that long, but in comparison to Iceland, I thought it was staggeringly, and the whales, I mean,
Yes.
the icebergs that are so many different shapes. It is absolutely stunningly beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I've also very much enjoyed this conversation. What a wonderful pairing. But I was curious to know whether either of you have had work that's been adapted for the screen. I'm so aware these days that I love these, especially the British television things that are all about place and, character, but the landscape and the place and the village that you talked about, it's as if they're a character in themselves, and they seem to translate naturally to television or to a movie or something. Has that come up for you? You come from a television background.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
your work translated?
Well, one has already been made years ago, with Sleepers was made into a movie with Brad Pitt, and three are, Nonna Maria is being made for Italian television. So, in fact, I'm going there next month to, I don't know to do what, just tell them what a great job they're doing. And one of my earlier books is also gonna be filmed in Italy, so, that I have very little control over, but I guess I have, the producer of the Nonna Maria Italian books, the books in Italian is, Raffaella Leone, and one of the reasons I sold it to her, because I got an offer for more money from someone else, but her dad was Sergio Leone, who I grew up watching, all the spaghetti westerns. I said, I gotta go with Raphael. And my agent, being my agent, said, there's more money. I said, yeah, I don't care. It's Sergio's daughter. And she got a kick out of it. So I don't know what she's doing. I mean, she wants an American actress who is Italian to play Nonna. Somebody like I've heard a couple of names kicked around, like a Lorraine Bracco, who lives in Italy half the time anyway. But the dialect is gonna be hard, and what they wanted from me was the location was between Malta and Ischia to film. And I've never been to Malta, but they told me it's similar, but basically Malta is cheaper. And so Raphael's or somebody in her office called and said, if I can get the same deal from Ischia, we'll film in Ischia. Of course, Ischia said yes, but I know my people, as soon as we get there, the bill is gonna double. And so I told her that, I said, they're telling him yes now, but once you're there, you're there. And so we'll see what happens. So I'll go there and try not to get completely robbed. But so yeah, I mean, my attitude towards them, I sell another one is getting made for HBO Max. Is it still called HBO Max or Max? It's that one I did the script. Barry Levinson's the director on it, and so that one I have more of a control. Sometimes you don't have any control. I'm a little. It's Lorenzo di Bonaventura who I trust, but it's his project, and you'll see my name, and if there's a producer, I'll say thank you, but I have no. For me, it always means, and it sells a ton of paperbacks, basically, is what it does. And whether the movie's good, the movie's bad, whatever, it moves books. And that's the end goal for us, is to sell the books. Because if you don't want to make the change, if you get upset at the changes they make, then don't sell the books.
Yeah. And I had two options for my first book, and the options are a great thing because if they expire, then you get paid for every option. But the trick is the script, and if the script isn't great, and you read the script, and even my mother said, "Don't allow that to happen." Then you don't want something out there that's not representative of your work. So it's tricky. But it's also, I haven't had the experience of having it come to fruition.
But if you get like Barry Levinson, to this day has asked me a question. I mean, I was lucky that a lot of my books were an option. Barry's the only one that's ever asked me, in the editing process, how many pages did you lose? And I said, on that particular book, 95 pages. He said, do you have them? I said, yeah. He said, send them to me. So he gave me his FedEx address. I sent it. Out of that, he and I wrote 5 scenes that made their way into the movie. So because he's more a writer as much a writer, he started as a writer. He wrote for the Carol Burnett Show. He wrote a ton of movies. He wrote 4 Mel Brooks movies. If you ever watch High Anxiety, Barry is the guy in the shower going, here's your paper, here's your paper. And he also wrote the famous Gone with the Wind sketch in Carol Burnett Show. And I'm sorry, one more that he did write, forget what, do you remember the dentist sketch with Tim Conway?
Yes. Oh.
Barry said it was the easiest thing to write. I just told Tim Conway, you Novocaine your arm, you Novocaine your leg, and take it from there. And Harvey laughs, and that's it. But anyway, so he's a writer, so he asked the writer's question. I've never had another director ask me anything like that. Because you did toss a lot. I don't know how many pages you lost in the editing, but you usually lose like 30 to 50 pages, 60 pages, depending on the book.
Yeah.
But they should make use of those, because some of them have scenes that maybe didn't fit the book, but might fit a TV show or a movie. TV, you have more power. A writer is king in television. And in movies, the director is the guy, the woman, whoever's directing it. But they can't change a word on a TV. Like on Law and Order, when I got there, I didn't know that. And the first day that Jerry wanted to change a line, and the director turned to me and said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "What do you ask me for?" He said, "You're the guy." I said, "Oh." But it was Jerry Orbach. I said, "Yeah, sure, change it." I made it up. And now TV is the go-to place, and I like that 8-episode thing, but you're right. I mean, the best thing to do is to ask, and they hate this when book writers do ask this, to write all 8 episodes, and, they could say no, and then you can say no to the deal. But then, but when you say no, they throw more money at you.
The other thing is the audio. And I actually asked if I could do the audio, but they said no. They said they needed a professional actor to.
I've done one. It's easy. They make it sound like it's so complex. It's not. I mean, the weirdest audio.
Greenland would be tough.
Yes. The weirdest audio, by the way, I was friends with Judge Edwin Torres, who he called me up. He was also a writer. He wrote Carlito's Way, which was made into a movie. So he called me up. He said, "They're gonna do the audio. They offered me $5,000. I said, man, you got Al Pacino in the movie, you got Sean Penn, let them do it, you'll sell more books." He goes, "No, it's 5 G's in my pocket." I said, "All right." It is a collector's item because usually like Joe Mantegna's read a lot of my books, and when Joe does a woman's voice, he doesn't do a woman's voice. When Eddie did a woman's voice, he'd be, "Don't be doing that." It's like ridiculous. And Eddie said, "I don't care, man. You know what I got? I got $5,000. Yes, and you got a ridiculous audio that nobody bought. But yeah, they don't like it when we ask to do the audio. They always tell you we need a seasoned pro. And there is a guy who made a career out of it. This Italian guy is making a fortune doing it. But
Any other questions? First of all, I would like to congratulate both of you because you both answered each other's questions and even answered questions that I was going to ask you. So therefore, I don't have those questions to ask anymore. And what is more relative to Provence book, because Ischia, you already answered it. I was wondering initially whether they would mind having a murder take place in their island. Evidently, they love the publicity they get. So you answered that question very well. Were they aware that you were writing, did they ask you? Did they mind? Did they talk to you? Because, like, I know that French people don't necessarily talk easily to others, but not with the South, right?
So in Provence, well, I spent a lot of time in this one little village and continued to go back and actually was there for long periods of time. And so I got to know the people, but I didn't ask permission because it wasn't about anyone specifically. It was all created, but no one in specific, except maybe that little bit about the person behind the tobacco bar. But other than her, really everything was created.
Were they aware that you were writing?
And they knew I was a writer, but they weren't aware that I was writing about them because I really wasn't. I made up the elderly poet. I never met an elderly poet in Provence. And Ilse was from Greenland. And so these were totally really made up people. Madame Hugo was some completely made up French person. And so it was, I've been studying the French for my whole life. So I've really, thanks to our high school teachers and other people, but I've really, I hope to have been able to capture the sense of the French. So I've yet to hear from my French readers, if I have, but I hope to capture their joie de vivre and their savoir-faire and their all the things that I love about the French. I hope to capture and also make it well-rounded and not cliche. That's the trick too, not to do the touristy thing. So that is.
Can I ask a second question? With history, you both mentioned history. Well, with your Nonna, I mean, she lives through so many such a dramatic period. She really lived history. And how did that does that help you? Do you put that in the book? Or the series of books that you've been doing?
Yes, but what I had to do, because Nonna is now a contemporary character, the real Nonna died in 1975. So any stories Nonna in the novels tells about World War II, I attribute to her mother. Which makes, but those really happened to Nonna, but I couldn't, she'd be 178. So that was the only change I made, so I had to add mom into it. Because I think the scene where Iske got bombed a lot. I mean, the reason Nonna, both in real life and the fictional character, drinks only coffee and wine is because the water during the war, since the bombings were consistent and every day the water was brown. To this day, you can't drink the water in Iske. And so she just, the doctor in the books is really her nephew, Agostino. And one time she had a little minor issue. He made the doctor to make house calls. And he said, no, Zia, I want you to take this one pill a day. And I was there and he said, Lorenzo, pour me a little water. So I get a bottle of water, pour it, and Nonna said, you want me to take this pill? He goes, yes, every day, one pill a day. He goes, well, pour me a glass of wine. He said, Zia, she said, can I not take it with wine? He goes, yeah, you could take it with wine, but all right, fine, give it to me. He's gonna take it out. And he was stunned. I mean, she would drink 14 cups of coffee a day and 6 glasses of wine a night and not be like hyper or drunk. So that's pretty,
That's amazing.
that is pretty cool.
And for you, reading, doing research, as you said, about the history of Provence, and presumably about other things, Provence. Is that what struck you most from the history, which presumably you learn more things about Provence, the history, from what you already knew or from what you were seeing in Provence? How does the history relate?
Well, one thing was the language, the Occitan, which is the Provençal. And I did a lot of research on Eleanor of Aquitaine, the Middle Ages and courtly love. And I learned that Provençal was the first language that was used and in the vernacular for poetry versus the Latin. And that made me feel good about my poet. And he was from his ancestors were troubadours. And so I did learn about all that wonderful, the version of love that they have, which actually we have really adopted since the Middle Ages. It's shaped really our modern version of love in many ways. Not entirely, but in many ways it has. And so that was fascinating too. I learned a lot about and also in Greenland, the history of Greenland. I learned a lot about the explorers and the language and how they became an autonomous territory still in the Kingdom of Denmark. So there's so much fun to write a novel because you learn so much. I mean, it's so much fun. I love the research. part.
And then that comes in, as you said.
Yeah,
No?
and that all comes in, yeah.
Exactly.
How different is the accent from Provence to Paris? Is it like Eastgate to Rome where they wouldn't understand me?
Exactly, it's an entirely different language. I mean, it's got a lot of Arabic and Spanish versus the French. I mean, it's really, that's why this woman was really upset. Because it's an entirely different, there's very little relation.
Right.
It's very tricky, but anyway, it still exists.
So Lizzie, since you're concerned about the reaction of your French reader, who translates your books into French, and do you have any control over that? You're an educated consumer.
Well, it's all up to the subsidiary rights division at the Random House, that they have the rights to the French, the other languages. So I'm hoping that I'll have, but I have heard that the French aren't necessarily that keen about Americans writing about France. So, but I have my hopes, and we'll see, because there are editors there, I mean, but it's all up to the,
You get the book later, you don't.
yeah. And what's so much fun about the different versions, because the first book had I had Russian, German, and Brazilian, and you get these books coming to you with different covers, and
Kind of cool.
it is fun. I mean, and you don't know what the translation is.
My Japanese publisher always sends a letter saying if you find any errors, please let me know. Okay. I didn't know you read it backwards, to be honest. All right, yeah, I'll look for them. And some of the covers have nothing to do with what the book is about,
That's true.
nothing.
Yeah.
But it sells in their country, so and we know which countries steal too. You get, like Greece offers $1,000, take it or leave it, and they steal it anyway, so you might as well take the 1,000. And God knows what, Turkey's another country that clips. And, my lawyer said, what are you gonna do, fly to Turkey? I mean,
But the Germans are very tough on the editing. If there's one mistake, apparently they get their money back. The publishers, they send the books, the mistakes to the publisher, and the publisher is required to, well, I don't know if that's still the case, but that was the case with my first book. That
where they send you the money, they send back the money?
yeah, and the first book, it was, publisher was in East Germany. And I met the publisher, and she said, you had a few mistakes in there. We had to refund the money. And, but she said, her readers, she was very proud of it, that her reader, of course, it wasn't East Germany at the time. But that she said she was very proud of that her readers were very thorough in the fact checking. So it's funny.
You have to, the subrights people, I mean, they get very excited. Like last week, I got a call, I got an email that Nonna Maria sold to Serbia. And I said, okay. And they said, they're building you in Serbia. I said, what does that even mean? And they said, you're gonna be big in Serbia. I said, I'm not going to Serbia. And big, they give me $400. It's like, and then she threw it back, Grisham only got 500. I don't, yeah, fine. And then we got an offer from Ukraine. I said, what am I, big in war-torn countries? They're building me in war-torn countries, essentially. So they said, wait till you see the Serbian translation. They got the best guy. And I said, all right, okay. So yeah, they get very excited when they do, because it's tougher now than I'm used to being. 10 years ago, there's big money in foreign sales. Now there's a lot less. And it's harder. It's harder. And just like with the French, the Italians, they don't like Italian American authors to. David Baldacci told me one time he was offered 3 times the amount of money if his book was published as David Smith in Italy, as opposed to Baldacci. And with me, they did want me to change my name for one of the books. I said, my family already doesn't believe I write these books. So now, what are you gonna call me, Lorenzo Jones? So I just said, Berlusconi was my publisher, so we had a lot of back and forth fun with them. Because, the Italians are very deceptive. I know my people, but he one time returned the contract signed. they're supposed to send back half the check, half the amount. And there was no check, so the agent called, said there's no check, oh, we forgot it. It took 4 months to get that check, and, you know, that's the game they play, which is fine, you know, it's all found money.
For Elizabeth, I really enjoyed your book. It's like too many vacations, so thank you this summer. But one of your characters, Frey, is a specialist in AI and he assembles programs for underserved countries. And I was curious to know what your thoughts in translating AI, the future of translating and not being able to.
Yeah,
He talks about you can't translate empathy,
right,
that can't be done.
yeah.
And I'm curious to know your thoughts on.
Right, so of course I had to include AI if it's a book on translation. So, because her publisher at one point says, you know, why should I even pay you? I just get some AI to do this translation word for word. And of course, that would be terrible translation at this point. I mean, we're all, you know, general AI is on its way. So, at this point, my character is protected because the translation is not perfect at all. And there is a dictionary called it's an encyclopedic dictionary of untranslatables. And it's a big one, and it's about words that are defy translation. So anyway, it's going in that direction. I'm not an expert, but it's something that my character had to deal with. But I do think the human touch, it's this, I don't know if I find my character in the book said it's impossible for AI to get the empathy thing. It's hard enough for human beings. If we could get it down, maybe we could teach them, but I don't know if we have it down yet. So I think that's a whole frontier that is yet to be developed, but I had to deal with it. So thank you for noticing. Did I answer your question? I know, okay.
But you know, screenwriters are more afraid of it that I know than at the moment. I mean, I don't know what 5 years from now it's gonna be like. But the script writers are a little nervous about it, very nervous about it. I'm not sure why they're so nervous about it, but they feel a little edgy on it.
They can come up with great plots and great I mean, it's all there. It is scary. Actually.
Yeah, and I think so one guy said for an existing show, like say a Law and Order, for example, they could, you know, the Jerry Orbach character, Sam's character, what they're gonna, at the end, how the show's gonna float. Sam's not gonna get killed, Jerry's not gonna get killed, so they solve the crime at, at 10:40 or 10:45. And but I just hope, I don't know what's gonna happen. That's the unknown, and that was one of the reasons that the Writers Guild strike lasted as long as it did.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. This has been an outstanding
you.
bid. Thank you.
Thank you.